Hikers and backpackers of Reddit. What is the weirdest or creepiest thing you have found while hiking? I was hiking in the HOH rainforest on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington back in '03. I was trying to do this really snazzy hike from the ocean to Mt. Olympus. Well, day 1 is a blast. Get everything accomplished. Day 2. Fog. Fog as thick as anything you can imagine. I can't get a decent GPS fix. So I'm pretty much blind. But I know if I follow the HOH river upstream, I'll get to one of the campsites I'm going for. Day goes by. And fog isn't clearing up at all. I get to a fairly big clearing and set up my tent. I grab a power bar and chill out as it starts going to the darkest black night I've ever experienced. I'm seriously a bit unnerved at the whole, scared as much as just anxious. About 2 in the morning. I start hearing this huffing noise. Like Darth Vader without the helmet on. My imagination starts to go freaky. And I reach for my flashlight. I pull the drawstring on the tent to poke my head out. Still dark as death. I hear the noise coming from maybe 5 feet to my right. At this point, I'm seriously rethinking my belief in Sasquatch. I poke my flashlight out and turn it on. I'm a few feet away from a massive Roosevelt elk, who'd lost his way in the dark as well. He sees the flashlight, bolts the other way, tags a tree and knocks himself clean out. I laid in the tent until I heard a groan, a bunch of commotion, and the big guy grunt away. Ha ha ha. Poor guy. I hope he was okay. Glad he didn't rape and murder you. Been waiting years for this question. Hiking alone at dusk, doing a 5-mile loop in the Santa Monica Mountains in Los Angeles. I see another lone hiker approaching from the opposite direction. As he gets closer, I suddenly realize I know this person. It's the guy who played James Gumb, aka Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. We get within 3 feet of each other. He looks at me. He sees the lightning bolt of recognition hit my face. His sad and resigned expression back said it all. Yes. I'm him. No. I'm not really a serial killer. I walked briskly by him anyway and didn't look back until I was a good 100 yards down the trail. Captain Leland Stottlemyre? That's awesome. The guy actually seems pretty cool in interviews. Although he is really good at playing creepy characters. The words per audacia ad ignotum drawn in the snow in the absolute middle of nowhere. Yet no footprints around them. The words were probably a few hours old. The closest translation we could find was through Audacity towards the unknown. Boldly go where no one has gone before? So Captain, you're going to write a Latin phrase in the snow, and then leave no footprints behind. What exactly is the purpose of this exercise? To screw with them. Mr. Spock. Beam me up. Scotty. An old as dirt nudist hiker. No shoes. No flip-flops. Just his pack. A hat. And a pair of trekking poles. Ran into him while I was day hiking one of rockiest, nasty section of the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. He was super friendly. Very talkative. And completely ignored any and all questions about his lack of clothing. We walked together while he talked on and on for a few miles before I turned back and he carried on. Lefty, if you're still out on the trails, stay weird. This is why Lefty won't be joining you on your trip. He only hikes nude. /u/Vanguard_Anon. I lived in a national park by myself for 3 months. Several times when I was going back to my trailer for the day, I would hear music like a music box or an ice cream truck. It was always loud and sounded like it was coming from somewhere over my head. One day I decided to look for the source, so I followed the dirt road past my trailer. The music continued. I couldn't tell if I was getting closer or not. I had my eyes on the trees and looked down just in time to avoid stepping on a snake. I scrambled back, but it didn't move. I realized it was dead, and it wasn't alone. There were half a dozen dead copperheads stretched out in the road, looking in the same direction. I went back to get my car because I couldn't bring myself to step over them. But by the time I got my keys, the music had stopped and I didn't hear it again. Edit. Sometime after this happened, my friends told me there was a haunted prison in the same park, the P Farm. So, that was good to know. So I've heard music like this before too, but never followed it. Thanks for reinforcing that I shouldn't. Haven't the movies taught us to follow the strange music in the woods? This thread enforces that I need another human and a dog with me when I geocoach. Edit. A word. I would also like to add a gun to the list. Bushwalking in NSW, Australia. Me and my friend came across this weird platform-looking thing made out of rocks. Later that year, the cops arrested some bloke on suspicion of the murders of a series of backpackers who had gone missing over the course of a few years. And at the sites of several of the murders slightly off in the bush were these altars. Current affairs show runs footage of one. The trial and run up to it were all over the news, and yet it's that thing we found. The altars were typically no more than 300 yards from the victims' shallow graves. The guy who was arrested and subsequently convicted for the murders is Yvonne Milat, Australia's worst serial killer. The cops are pretty sure that at least one other person was involved in the murders than the one now in jail for the crime. They just couldn't prove it. Do you have any links or pics? No pics. This was in the 90s. We didn't carry cameras with us everywhere. We also had to walk uphill both ways to school barefoot in the snow, you whippersnapper. We'll look around for links. Edit. The Wikipedia article gave me a few details I hadn't heard before. Apparently Milat in his sworn statement said up to 7 people were involved. Also, the number of his victims is recorded as 7, which is a little WTF. Also, the site of the murders made it evident that the killers had spent considerable time with the victims before their murders. Shudder. We'll keep looking for something about the altars. Edit. Turns out the altars, or whatever they were not all that well known. I am gonna keep looking, but the thing described as a fireplace in this account of the murders sounds like what we saw. Okay, can't find much video-wise, and I really should go and be productive. But here's something. Trailer for a film based on the backpacker murders, which came out about 5 years ago. Includes stuff taken from a couple of other famous Australian cases. Because in the desolate reaches of the outback no one can hear you scream. A sequel is in the works. Edit. The film is called Wolf Creek and is well worth seeing. There's another Aussie film I can recommend that kinda uses parts of the Milat story and is pretty dang good, called Acolytes. Both are recommended. Happy viewing. In 2011, Milat went on a hunger strike in an unsuccessful attempt to be given a PlayStation. LOL. A man wearing a Ku Klux Klan hat with eye holes. Nothing else. Masturbating. I biked past him in the woods on the way home in 7th grade. Yes. It was Florida. Edit. This traumatized me for years. Thanks for finally giving me a good laugh. Guys. BTW, it was Cutler Ridge. FL. Was fortunate enough to do a through hike of the ED in 2012. Stopped by this guy's house known as the Ice Cream Man right on the trail. An old man with thick glasses appeared at the door. Took me inside by the hand. and gave me an orange cream popsicle as he read Where the Wild Things Are to me as we sat at his kitchen table. Weirdness level 7. 3/10. He sounds like a nice guy. Plus he's known as the ice cream man. So I'm surprised you thought he would do something else. Didn't say I was surprised. At that point in my hike, unusual situations had become commonplace. And he, Bill Ackerley, is a nice person. It's just not an everyday thing that as a grown man I get invited into strangers' home to eat popsicles and be read bedtime stories. That's all. I was out fossil hunting in a wash after a thunderstorm the night before. I figured it had to uncover a bit of stuff down in the stream bed. I found this. As found. I started a thread about it way back when. Edit. I should add I was in Minneapolis. Actually St. Paul the First think. Near St. Thomas University along the bluffs. In the linked thread above, if you click on the actual link, it leads to my Flickr that explains what happened with the mask. I also made a follow-up post later with results of analysis. Because this op always delivers. And it is here. And a couple more pics. Update. This was like 6 years ago. People keep PMing me for the update that the admins deleted for some reason. Why they did that? I have no idea. Here is the text from the Flickr that explains it so you don't have to PM me for the answers anymore. From one of the curators at the Science Museum of Minnesota. I did finally have the time to give your mask a good examination with a colleague of mine. The mask is certainly a modern creation. As you had expected. Perhaps someone's art project. Still. What an interesting find while out collecting fossils. Here are my thoughts and speculations. We took a series of XRF readings. The material is mostly copper. Between 93 and 98%. There is some silver in the mix, suggesting that it may include some native copper. However, there is also a higher than usual Zn content for native copper. Usually there is not Zn in native copper from the upper Midwest. There are also percentages of Mn and Al, which doesn't occur naturally in copper. Manganese and aluminum was not added to copper until the 20th century. Alloys that include Mn and Al were created during the war efforts to reduce corrosion. So, the mask is a cocktail of probably scrap copper and perhaps some native copper. Stylistically, it doesn't resemble anything I've seen archaeologically from the upper Midwest. However, it is interesting that it was clearly created to look rough and old. The calcite deposits were probably added to give it a look of natural long-term corrosion. Probably lime concrete. The crystallization is spotty and undeveloped. Technologically, the mask was definitely cast. The metal was heated beyond its melting point over 1900 F, leaving drips and bubbles. This is not consistent with Aboriginal copper working practices, where copper was hammered and annealed. I don't think the mask could have been buried in fossiliferous gravels in the ravine for very long. Examining the mask under UV light revealed some very fragile wax along one of the edges. Some of it dislodged with the slightest touch with a probe. So, that is unlikely to have survived on the mask for long, especially in an active environment like that ravine. The mask may have been left as little as a day or two before you found it. Still, it is yet another great example of a very strange thing left behind in an odd place. Like I said, probably someone's high school or college art project. How it got in the bottom of the ravine is anyone's guess. Great conversation piece. That rings true for what I thought. I was in that ravine literally the week before and it wasn't there then. Anyway, it's still a neat conversation piece to hang up in my shop or garage. That looks really interesting. Did you ever find out more about its origin/age/purpose/etc? Edit. I just saw the follow-up in the other thread. Was actually kind of disappointed. But it's still interesting. Link to follow-up for the lazy.